this meeting to order at 9:09 p.m. Roll call, please.
All right, presidents, Baker. Here. Wilright. Here. Hanson.
Present.
Weiss.
Oh, here. I'm here.
Okay. Jones.
Here.
Oh, yeah. Brown. Here. Lovett. Sid. Martel.
Present.
McMurtry.
Here.
Duncan.
Here.
Senators Baker.
Here.
Wilright.
Here.
Hanson. Weiss.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Lovett.
Here.
Sid. Martel. So enthusiastic. McMurtry.
Here.
Duncan.
Here.
Accept. Okay.
Cool. Approval of meeting minutes from last week.
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, cool, that's fine. Still passes, it's fine. Denied. All right, officer updates and reports. Secretary.
All right. So as I announced before, because of conflict of interest, Brian won't be able to serve on the election committee. So I am nominating for Senate tonight to vote in Gage Wright as the parliamentarian substitute. Can we just do like the
Yeah, so we have to vote on this.
Yeah. Do we want to say who Gage Wright is?
do you guys want to know who Gage Wright is? Or
Yeah.
do you trust me
All right, Gage Wright is a senior at Duncan. He's been the legislative vice president, which is the equivalent of parliamentarian, for 2 years now. He runs all the elections at Duncan and does a great job there.
Yeah.
And he pretty much wrote most of Duncan's constitution.
Very
He's good with laws.
Does anyone have any questions about this appointment? Awesome. Can we do a show of hands vote? Brian, is that allowed?
Yeah, come on.
All right, so voting members, those in favor, raise your hand. All right, and then those opposed? Cool.
All right, cool beans. All right, so the election committee is going to be Gage Wright, our director of elections, Vera Song, and our director of technology, Jalen Liu, who is being substituted by Robbie currently. All right, so thank you.
Cool. Now Christian and Cynthia are going to give a quick update on the petition you guys might have seen about bringing back professional Spanish classes.
Hey guys! Okay, so we met with the dean and the director, and basically what they told us is that they're not actually canceled. They are for the semester, if you probably knows that, but they will be reinstated in the upcoming fall. They're going to appear as 300 level classes, as opposed to whatever they were appearing before, and they're going to have different sections of like medical Spanish, and then like business Spanish, and then engineering Spanish, but they're all going to have like this kind of core curriculum of like a competency in Spanish.
Yeah, so this is like if anyone is going to take like 301 or 302 or has in the past, 301 and 302 will have different sections. There'll be like 301 that is a medical Spanish version, and 301 that is like a business, and 301 that is an engineering, or maybe legal. They haven't exactly put out exactly what the sections will be, but there will be a great deal of options for 301 and 302, and you'll still develop the same linguistic competencies that you would have at the 301 and the 302 level. It'll just be the opportunity to sort of specialize more.
Yeah, and they're also really interested in kind of bringing in internships and like utilizing that. So like Nimish met with us, and he said that he interned in a hospital while taking one of the classes, and that was really helpful. And they're really interested in bringing like opportunities like with legal and other engineering opportunities as well. So they're really interested in bringing internships and kind of tying that in with Spanish.
Yeah. And they're also expanding the language options during the summer especially at the 200 level. So you can go in as a freshman, take a 101, a 102, and then go in over the summer and knock out the entire intermediate level and come in at the advanced level over the summer. And that will be with Rice faculty abroad, and you will be able to get Rice credit for that. So that they're really targeting freshmen for that. So, I guess it'll be the next cycle of freshmen that really have the opportunity, but they're doing some of that this year. So especially since freshmen necessarily don't have an internship or something extremely productive to do that first summer, they'll be able to do that.
Does anyone have any questions for us?
Yeah.
I guess I kind of have two questions.
Mhm.
First, you didn't really speak to why they said that they wanted to make the change. What was it that they recognized in the program that they wanted to fix, and what is it in this new one that will fix it?
So they realized that in the professional Spanish level classes, there wasn't being enough taught about the linguistic level. There was students were lacking that core. And so they basically wanted to combine and put a professional class with the linguistic competencies to better serve students and whatever they wanted to do.
So they saw it more as a vocab class versus implementing that with grammar and correct usage.
So now they're doing the vocab and the correct usage at the same time.
Yeah.
So the people that are in 301 and 302 or have taken it again, are they taking the exact same class just with a little bit of a twist and into the medical field, for instance? Or how does it differ if you've already taken the class?
They didn't speak about that, so I
Okay.
don't think there'll be much of an option there. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I
We can
imagine
ask them.
we can ask them
I
for
think
that
we're
select group of students who will be at
We're
301
gonna
and 302.
invite them to it.
Yes, and we'll invite them to an
Yeah,
essay meeting.
so you can.
They can answer it there. That'll be the best place.
Student.
What?
We'll be inviting them
Yeah.
to an upcoming meeting soon.
Yeah, they were really excited to come. They said 9 o'clock worked well for them, so for some reason, I don't know why.
So this information is posted on the essay website under the petitions page, so if somebody asks you about it, you can direct them there. And then there's a written response for them as well as a summary of the notes from their meeting.
Thanks, guys.
Now we're gonna do Rice Environmental Society, so I think we're gonna start with the blanket tax report. So they applied to be a new blanket tax organization for next year. And so Michael chairs the committee that looked at their request.
So as you guys know, Michael and Alex did a presentation on RES a couple of weeks ago, and our blanket tax committee met with them to talk about their proposal to become a new blanket tax committee. So what we talked about during the committee and meeting was basically what their mission statement was and whether their budget and actual goals met their mission statement, which would ultimately also benefit the greater student body as well. So we met and talked to them. It was really similar to what the presentation they gave to you guys a couple weeks ago, but what we really wanted to see was that they made use of every single part of their budget. So what they currently have right now is that 90% of their budget that they get from blanket tax, which they are asking for $9 from each person, which is which is the same as Reset previously had as well. So 90% would be to individual project ideas that would be proposed to RES, while the rest of the 10% would go to the blanketing environmental committees. And we saw that this was a really good use of it. And to make things short, we have this document that we wrote up online, so you can read more further into it, but basically we recommend a $9 blanket tax amount as well. And if you guys have any questions, you can ask me, Michael, Alex, I'm sure.
The report will be online and it'll also be linked in the referendum.
Yeah, and probably on the election ballot. Oh.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Wait, so I'm still a little confused. You said that the $9 blanket tax, which Reset has for 90% was for student proposals.
No, so it is, well, I guess finish your question.
And then, but you're saying, is that still the same plan for this $9, that the majority of it would go to student proposals?
Yeah, okay, so like he said, 90%, so Reset got $9 per student. That amounts to just over $34,000 per year. And they were using most of it, but it was also very limited. Reset, the way it was chartered, any project that a student applied for needed to show that it could, be financially beneficial to the university in the long run. So a lot of environmental projects were excluded. So we're taking the same amount of money, and 90% of that, that's kind of a starting number. RES will be able to change it, it's in the Constitution. But 90% of it will go to what Reset used to do, showing financial gain or not showing financial gain. So kind of what Reset used to do and more. Any individual can apply for it, and the delegates from all the environmental groups on campus will approve that. And then 10% will go directly to the environmental member groups. So things like the Student Association Environmental Committee, the Environmental Club, Real Food Revolution. And so theoretically, a student individually could apply through one of those organizations to tap into the 10% as well.
Okay, my only concern was that I get a little worried about basically approving money for this organization before approving the plans on how it's going to be used. And that's what it sounds like 90% is going to be. That you're going to get this money first, and then the students will apply for projects which are going to be approved.
Well, that's how Reset used to work as well.
Yeah, but they didn't get the money, so I'm assuming.
They didn't what?
Well, they had a $9 blanket tax, and it lost by 13 votes in the last general election. So,
Okay, well then, I mean, if people are fine with that when they vote, then
I mean, so the one thing I'd say about that is that's a really valid point, right? Like, this is not a real, at least you look at every single other blanket tax organization, the Thresher, intramural sports, they're all providing services to students, right? But for this one, it's kind of an exception where you're providing money and then they're reallocating it to other students. And absolutely, there is that point there that, you're not approving the actual use of the money, you're approving the money itself. But I think the mitigating factor in this point, or at least kind of what the reason why they're asking for blanket tax money, in my opinion at least, is that being able to have that money is basically like us as students making our voices heard, right? We're saying we value environmental causes. The administration's not going to pay $9 a month. There's no way any of these projects can get funded through any other means other than students putting their money out there. And so basically it's kind of like it's us putting our voices out there and saying this is how we want to use our money. And so it doesn't look like what regular blanket taxes look like. And I think that's up for people to decide, do you value this type of project and this type of allocation to put into environmental projects?
yeah, I think the big difference that some people it seems a lot different from other blanket tax organizations because it's not really, and it's not saying we need X amount of money to fund this organization's activities. It's saying, let's make this fund and have an organization administer it.
Yeah,
Would you
and I mean,
consider it a fair characterization?
this fund is open to everybody. Like common blanket tax organizations, the Thresher, no one in this room, unless they're on the Thresher, really has a say in how that money is spent. You appreciate it because you get the Thresher every week and you enjoy reading it. But this kind of fund, while it is a bit more ambiguous as to how the money will be used, we have a general idea. It will be for environmental causes. But anyone in this room could then take an idea and apply and have a very good shot of getting that money into that project.
Okay, awesome. So then to get this on the ballot, we have to have a referendum. So Brian is gonna talk about that real quick.
Okay, basically what this legislation says is that we have to put a referendum on the ballot. According to our constitution, an organization requesting blanket tax funds has to thoroughly substantiate that request before the blanket tax standing committee, regardless of the committee's recommendation. That has happened. In this case, the committee has recommended that the student body approve the referendum and the blanket tax. So basically what is in this legislation is the proposed text of what it's going to say on the ballot. So it goes through and says that they've proposed the creation of a $9 blanket tax, discusses briefly what the organization is, that it does not currently receive blanket tax funding. It will link to the blanket tax standing committee's report. It will link to the amendments that would happen to the SA Constitution and bylaws that basically change the part that allocates blanket tax. And then it will link to RES's constitution so that voters can get more information about the organization. And then, unlike in previous years, it will explain exactly what a yes and no vote will do. So if you vote yes, you're allocating the money. If you vote no, you're voting not to allocate that money. The remainder of it is just explaining what the associated bylaw amendments would be.
Does questions about this? Okay, and we're gonna be voting on this on February 10th, and the election opens like at midnight, February 10th. Cool. So then, still on the note of the
Yeah.
Rice Environmental Society, we have legislation that was introduced 2 weeks ago at the first meeting of Senate. And this was just in support of the creation of the Rice Environmental Society itself. I'm gonna bring that up. And we are voting on this today. So do we have any questions here? Proposed amendments?
We updated it, just to show you the red, we updated it to reflect the recommendation of the Blanket Tax Committee, and then we added "and image," just to broaden it, but everything else is how you saw it 2 weeks ago. So if no one has any questions, can I motion to vote?
Yep. And a second? All right. Ready, Nathan?
Yes. All right, Presidents Baker.
Yay.
Wilrice.
Yay.
Hansen.
Yay.
Weiss. Who are the proxies?
Oh, Rocky.
Yeah, man.
Wait, what do I do?
Yay, nay, or abstain?
Yeah, for the, Jen.
Yay.
Thank you. Brown.
Yay.
Lovett.
Yay.
Sid.
Yay.
Martel.
Yay.
McMurtry.
Yay.
Duncan.
Yay.
Senators Baker.
Yay.
Wilrice.
Yay.
Hansen.
Yay.
Weiss.
Yay.
Jones.
Yay.
Brown.
Yay.
Lovett.
Yay.
Sid.
Yay.
Martel. McMurtry.
Yay.
Duncan.
Yay.
Treasurer.
Yay.
Secretary. Yeah. EVP. IVP.
Cool.
Alright.
So that passes. The next group that's requesting blanket tax is Catalyst. So they're going to come up and talk about their organization, because they haven't introduced it before, and why they're requesting blanket tax money.
We also don't have the report for this one, so let's go with that.
Hi, my name is Amber. I'm the editor-in-chief, one of the editors-in-chief of Catalyst. This is our most recent edition. Hopefully you've seen it floating around. So we publish annually. We are completely undergrad written, edited, and designed, and we're completely open to all undergrads of any major, any department. I'm personally a history major, just throwing that out there. So we give students practice and training in many types of scientific writing, from popular science all the way to a scientific article that is based upon their lab research. And all of our articles are written and explained, or almost all of them are written and explained for the layman. We strive to make sure that anybody at Rice can pick up one of our issues and understand what's going on and what's the newest and greatest at Rice. And finally, with our publication, we freely distribute to the Rice campus and to the Texas Medical Center. And so the second thing that we do is a blog. This is more recent, and it gives students an opportunity to weekly or monthly publish about anything they want to talk about that has to do with recent breakthroughs. Finally, we host a TEDx Rice U event. For those that are familiar with TED Talks, this is something we independently organize, and we bring in a lot of Rice faculty and Texas Med Center researchers to come and give TED Talks about what they're doing. Again, this is a wide range of topics and departments. For example, this year we're going to have linguistics. We've asked a music professor, so we definitely want to cater to the entire student population. So all this ties into our mission statement to help foster the discussion of research at Rice, something we hope that every Rice student will partake in. So that's Catalyst. Thanks.
Cool. And so now Michael's going to go over what the blanket tax group with. Oh yeah, sorry, do you guys have questions? Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, where did Catalyst get its funding from before?
So we have been completely dependent on our own fundraisers, and a lot of times it's very hard to publish. And for one thing, we can't actually create enough copies for every single student at Rice because of limitations on the fundraising. It's been harder and harder, especially with boba sales. I know this is going to sound, trite, I guess, but
It's just with everybody jumping on the bandwagon, that was our source of income, and then now that's like no longer possible. So it's always been a struggle, and we hope to, with the blanket tax, establish that as a baseline, having an annual publication, and then being able to expand further. Hopefully maybe having a second publication, one for each semester.
Yeah, I have another question. So have there been considerations for other sources of funding, maybe SAP funding, Envision?
We have gotten SAP, but it's never been enough. And the other thing, we tried corporate sponsorships last year, and we didn't really get any response. We tried local companies as well as bigger ones in the general area, and it wasn't fruitful.
Any other questions? Okay. And now Michael will talk about the blanket tax report.
Again, so when we met up with Rise Catalyst, I guess we also talked about the same thing we talked to RES about, but basically the gist of it was they proposed $2 for a blanket tax amount, and I guess right off the bat we looked at their budget, and there was a discrepancy between the actual amount that they offered or they asked for and the budget amount they had for it. So we talked to them, and there was apparently some miscommunication between the treasurers. So what we actually ended up recommending was a $1 blanket tax amount, and that would cover most of their costs for TEDx and the yearly publication, just to get them on their feet. But the thing that we were worried as a committee was that whether Rise Catalyst really focused on the greater student body, seeing that it's a research publication, what about the liberal arts and I guess the social sciences as well? What about them? So what we decided to do was actually give them a sunset clause, which is very, very similar to, or was exactly the same thing as reset, which would be giving them 3 years with $1 each year to see what they can do to expand, whether they can expand to do research in other fields as well, not just specific. Oh, they do other things other than science. I know that. Don't worry, I'll talk to you guys. But just to see and keep their editors on their feet so they really can expand as a group and not just depend on blanket tax money solely. So the point of the sunset clause would not only keep them on their feet, but also in 3 years, really just, I guess, review the blanket tax organization again as a whole to see if they really do need that $1 or not, or if they use that wisely enough. And that's what we recommended.
Yeah, and I think another aspect of having the 3-year sunset clause was that the hope is that if there is the blanket tax funding, so the organization doesn't have to run around doing BOGA sales every week and focusing on that, then they may be able to make money from ad revenues by having a couple of dedicated people to that, rather than like having the whole staff have to do all this fundraising in addition to putting out the publication. As far as the referendum, it's essentially the same thing as the other one you saw for RES, except there's 2 versions of the proposal. Both will be on the ballot. There will be 2 questions right next to each other. One will allow voters to Catalyst has revised its request to $1 with no sunset clause. So that's one of the options. And then the other option will be $1 with the 3-year sunset clause. If both pass, only the one without the sunset clause will take effect. You don't end up allocating $2 unintentionally. And then if the one without the sunset clause does not pass, but the one with it does, then it'll come up for renewal in 3 years.
Should that be a 2 in the second whereas? A new blanket tax of $1?
It's supposed to be.
It's revised its proposal to $1. Like the initial proposal was 2, but that's just getting across what the 2 proposals that are actually going to be on the ballot are.
And this one will also be voted on February 10th. Cool. All right. Jonathan can get over your tie. And Ravi is going to talk about some survey results and report.
I got it. Okay.
Just in
You have to enable
Alright, so I apologize for the length of this meeting. We're going to try to make this as short as possible. But first of all, thanks for listening through this. We think it's a really important issue, and we appreciate your interest. Yeah, that'd be awesome. So basically, this was a kind of a group that came together last semester. It was approved through Senate. It's a really great group of people. We're kind of composed of all different, from freshmen to seniors, all different types of majors. And all of these people put in a lot of work. We met every single week. We met a lot of people. We did a lot of different surveys and things like that. So first of all, I'd just like to thank everyone who helped out on this committee, because I think everyone did a great job. So basically, in September, we came up with this working chart. And kind of the idea was that there's all these conversations about digital education, online education, teaching excellence across the university. And as kind of the main constituent involved in a lot of these changes, it's really pertinent for the Student Association representing the undergraduates to become involved. And so what we really want to do is develop and communicate a unified response to these issues from this undergraduate body. And so specifically looking at the issues of teaching excellence, the internal use of digital education, and the external use of digital education. So we ended up meeting with a lot of different people across the university, faculty, administration, who are really important and key in a lot of these big decisions that are happening across the university. So this is kind of a list of the people we met with. We also met with a lot of other students and faculty members as well who aren't on this list. We also released a survey over winter break, and I got a fantastic response. We had over 590 responses, which is representative of around 15% of the undergraduate body. And in total, students spend over 100 hours aggregate of typing in results to the survey. So going through that, we'll be talking through some of the results here. But there's some very interesting things that we kind of found coming out of that. And also, talking about surveys, we have our two winners via random drawing, who win $25 coffee house gift cards. So it's CJM9, Chris Morris, and Megan Reck. Yeah. Michael wouldn't win this even if he wanted to. Yeah, I don't know what colleges they're from, but we'll send them an email. If they're from your colleges, tell them they won $25. So I think overall, so the main point we really want to make is in looking at all these new changes, online education, using technology in the classrooms, the first and foremost priority must be undergraduate education and improving the students' on-campus experience. And this is something that the Faculty Senate Working Group kind of came to the conclusion of is their first priority in looking at all these things. And we really want to emphasize this point as well, because we can be offering these online classes to people across the world. We can be investing in all types of technology, but there's no reason in doing it unless it's really enhancing what we're doing in the classrooms and enhancing our ability to learn and have a great experience here. And so this is something we'll be communicating to administrators and staff and faculty as we move forward, but I think this is really the point we want to drive home, is that everything should be through the lens of undergraduate education. So as we kind of said before, these are split up into 3 different sections of teaching excellence, using digital education internally, using digital education externally. And so we're going to kind of go through those 3 sections, but to start out for teaching excellence.
So we gave the people who filled out our survey a number of different choices as to what they believed were the top 3 most important qualities that they saw in like an effective professor, and this is just the chart with all the results. So the top 3 would be presents material effectively, that they're approachable, and that they're knowledgeable. And then there's also a free response of like other things that they believed made up an effective professor. So listed again. And then the second part of this that we wanted to know was in terms of feedback, in order to really help these professors understand, what students are looking for, and just to help them improve throughout the school year instead of maybe waiting until the end. with the ESTER feedback. And as you can see here, an overwhelming 74% of students have or currently have a professor that does take feedback throughout the semester. And of those, 80% felt that this, almost 80% of this felt that this improved the overall quality of the course. And then in general, 90% of the students felt that they all wanted to give feedback to professors throughout the school semester. And one other thing that we asked about was the drop evaluation. So basically for students who dropped a class during the semester, we wanted to see if it was good to have it be an option for them or have it required that they say why they dropped it. And 72% of the students said that they wanted this to be an option. And then about 24% of the students wanted this to actually be required of students, just so that other students know.
So then we looked at using digital education to improve teaching internal to Rice. And we decided that from the very beginning that the focus should always be on the internal and on improving the quality of the teaching at Rice, regardless of how much we delve into, I guess, external online education. So no Rice, another thing was that no Rice course should be easier online. One response that we got from the survey is that people who have taken online courses say that they're, in general, much easier than Rice courses. And if we're going to be giving credit at any point in time for online courses, we want them to be of the same rigor as Rice courses. And if we're going to be sending these out into the world, we also want them to be of the same rigor. And then we also learned, reinforced the idea in the survey that students value much more than the credit they get when they're receiving their education here. To begin with, 80% thought that being on campus is important to their Rice education. And on the next slide, many people listed different things as the most important takeaway from the Rice education. By far the biggest was personal development, and that comes from a lot more than, getting a stamp on your degree. And then finally, we saw that no course type is perfect. So Rice professors must be flexible. Like Hannah said, they must be open to feedback. This chart, the more red it is, or the lower the number, is kind of the worse it did in comparison to the standard way of teaching. All these courses have some kind of non-traditional aspect to them. They might be flipped, meaning students watch the lecture online and then go into class to work on a project. A lot of them have much more active online components than a traditional lecture. And so we just wanted to show with this that it doesn't always work. So like I said, teachers need to be flexible about knowing what does and doesn't work and being willing to change.
I think one really important part here is that this is data that the administration isn't looking at all. So at this point, they look at course evaluations, but they don't really look at how is the course structured? Is that course structure effective? And to this point, the conversation has been, oh, you're trying online classes, flipped classes, that's great. But as this data shows, right, there's some classes that do absolutely fantastic, like Comp 140, stellar reviews. Phys 125, on the other hand, not just saying, oh, I'm doing an online class doesn't really mean it's going to be a better class overall. And so that's something, this shouldn't be a burden on the students to collect this type of feedback. This should be something that the administration is working on. And so we'll be working to communicate these results and make sure that there's better mechanistic ways to kind of collect this feedback. I think another really important part that came through in this section is that almost 15% of students have said that they have created their own online course at Rice. So they will, it's typically like math, physics classes, they said they would not go to class at all and watch the OpenCourseWare lectures and things like that. And that's unacceptable, right? Like if 15% of students are skipping classes and looking at them online, that says something as to the quality of the teaching that's occurring in those classrooms and the quality of those course structures. And so that's something we also really want to address as well. So the teachers who are teaching classes that nobody's showing up to, that's their problem. That's not a problem with the students, right? Like that's obviously the students play some role in that, but that's a problem that needs to be addressed by the faculty.
Right, and finally, I'll keep it short, I promise. The external side of the whole digital education thing for Rice. You can go ahead and move to the next slide. So MOOCs, if you didn't know, they're massive open online courses. They started about 3 years ago, I believe, and Rice was among the first dozen or so that began offering
MOOCs online. So they're basically Rice taught courses that are open to the whole world. So Rice has already had a policy where they put out very high quality courses. One of the most famous ones, or the most popularly rated ones, is turned into Comp 140, taught by a few Rice comp sci professors. So basically this question is saying, should Rice pursue offering MOOCs? And we got a majority who did say yes. And you can go ahead and move on to the next one, Brian. And for the purpose of these MOOCs, most people, or the largest number of people, said to disseminate knowledge, so kind of more of a philanthropic thing, I don't know that word, and also saying contribute to undergraduate education. So that kind of reflects back on here. So finally, the principles that we kind of saw are that the MOOCs that Rice produces are kind of a really great opportunity to increase the Rice brand and kind of make Rice known in the world, first off, but while we're trying to make Rice known, we don't want to compromise what we have here. So like kind of what you said about the whole thing is that the undergraduate experience is still the most important thing overall, and that's basically it for mine.
So moving forward with these results, we will be putting kind of what we talked about today together in a concise 2-page report to be sharing with people on a more wide scale. We will post that online for your guys' consideration by next week. But we also kind of have a survey report that's more extensive based on all of the results from the survey. So the results we presented today maybe consist of like 25% of the stuff we surveyed on, but these are the most important parts. But we'll be making the survey results publicly available as well. We are scheduled to be presenting to the University Digital Education Working Group. That's through Caroline Lavander's office, who's the vice provost for kind of online education, interdisciplinary stuff. And so we'll be presenting to that group next month. And ultimately, once we've kind of circulated our results through both our kind of our advisors, our faculty advisors, through her office and this working group, we'll be sending it to President LeBron's office for a response to these individual recommendations. Yeah, does anybody have any questions? And thank you for sitting through that.
Cool.
Thank you.
You guys if you have more feedback, send it to Robbie. The next thing is honor council. So Adriana, you want to come up and talk about what you're proposing? Or whoever from honor council. Sorry.
Hey everyone, I'm Adriana Bracha. I'm chair for the Honor Council. So right now what we're proposing is a change to our constitution. It's 2 changes. It's Article 12, Section 1, and then Article 21. So Article 12, Section 1, as it stands, it says that 3 days after the investigative meeting, within 3 days, you have the right to withdraw from the university for 2 semesters, with the understanding that whatever violation that you're accused of will not otherwise be pursued after you return, after 2 semesters. We're trying to get this removed because there's been a recent, well, it's threefold, but the most important thing is that there's been a recent change in the way that registrar handles this withdrawal process that's making it very detrimental to the student. It used to be that if you took Article 12, you got a W, no one knew what happened, it was fine, you left, you came back. And students chose it because it actually was a clear indication that it wouldn't be found on your transcript, right? Well, this past year, the registrar has decided to change the withdrawal to be an XII to reflect Article 12 and put it on the transcript that the student is withdrawing for academic reasons. Now, we've been having problems because students who've taken Article 12 are finding that the XII is really hurting them in what they're doing. And so what we're trying to do is take it back because it no longer is what it was supposed to be. So Article 12, just to give you some background, was created at a time when the Honor Council was very different. We used to be that we started our penalties at an ethnic course in 2 semesters of suspension, and Article 12 reflected that. That's why it's the 2 semesters that it is. It was for students who didn't want to go through the process to leave with the same starting point. We've changed that now. Our approach to violations is a lot more holistic, and because of that, it's much less severe from the Honor Council of even 2 years ago. So that's basically it. In Article 21, we were asking to take that off because it goes hand in hand with Article 12. It's just the coming back to the university. Yes.
Why is it not an option to have the registrar go back to the old system of just putting the WL transcript?
Because that decision was taken with student judicial programs, which we are under, and they've taken it up with the registrar and decided that this is the process that they want to go in. And so we have to try and make changes to help the student out in the best way possible.
It was done in the interest of full disclosure to other institutions that students might be applying to. Rice wants to be open and honest with future graduate programs and job positions as possible. So this is something that SJP and the registrar decided to do.
So because of that, it's no longer the full kind of way to get rid of the violation that it once was. So that's what we're doing. Does anyone have any questions?
So does that mean a student can no longer withdraw at all?
It means that a student can still withdraw, but
I mean, under this, if they're after the
So the accusation could just be pursued when they came back, right? So
Correct.
like if I were to be accused and take 2 years off and I came back and said I want to come back to Rice, then I'd still be facing the honor council
yeah, there's
proceedings.
still that
So you
possibility.
can't withdraw to avoid the process.
Right.
So then you have the option for a student, except to go through the investigations?
That's something that we are in the process of doing, but right now, what we're really concerned about is a lot of students taking Article 12, thinking that they're able to get out of the violation, because the idea is that if you go through the honor council process, you won't have it on your external transcript that you were found in violation. Let's say it's a grade reduction, right? 1-letter grade reduction, 2-letter grade reduction. That reduction will be reflected on the official transcript, but nowhere on that external transcript does it appear that the grade was reduced because it was an honor code violation. However, taking Article 12 appears on the external transcript as an XII and reflects that it is an academic violation, and that is the reason for your withdrawal.
So wouldn't it be better just to inform the student that that's what would happen, but still give them the opportunity to do it knowingly, rather than like taking away this possibility altogether?
Yeah, so I guess the problem with doing that is that what we're trying to do is make it a protective measure, because we've seen that a lot of students recently are very afraid of going through it, and so they take the Article 12 and it's much worse. So the whole idea of Article 12 is that it's no longer helpful for the student. It's actually worse in every way possible because it shows on the external transcript students leave for an entire year when they can otherwise have avoided that.
Point out really quickly that the majority of our penalties, the vast majority of the penalties that we issue as an honor council are in the letter grade reduction range. We're not handing out suspensions left and right. And so at a time where the council was more punitive, it made sense for students to withdraw for 2 semesters rather than face what would potentially be a 3-semester suspension and an academic course. But because unless you go something really, really bad, we're for the most part issuing letter grade reductions, it becomes a lot more of a reasonable option to go through our process.
So you said like up to even 2 years ago, it was a lot more strict. So I would just be more worried about like a future honor council 2 years from now. Let's say we get a new director of SJP, or for whatever reason, it becomes more strict again, and now this option isn't there. How do you guys fight that sort of cultural shift on the honor council, or have you thought about that?
Right, so hopefully we won't be as severe. We've gone through a lot of things in the past, and right now we found that it's right. If we go back to a higher starting point, then we will create another clause like this to counterbalance it. What we're doing is just trying to help the student out, and at that point, hopefully we won't get too severe that we need to even go back to something like this, but that's something that we'll definitely work with SJP. In order to get it on the Constitution, we'd have to go through the same process again. But that's something that's why we created it in the first place, was to counterbalance the severity of the punishments. Yes?
So do the students who took Article 12 thinking that it wouldn't be on their transcript, like, is it still on their transcript saying that they took Article 12?
Yeah.
And there's nothing you do about it, even though, like, you told them that that was what was going to happen?
Yeah, so unfortunately, the registrar started, and we we didn't have control over this. The registrar started imposing it, and then we got the notice from SJP because we didn't ask them to do it. We were still under the same idea. I don't think anyone this year had that happen to them, but as soon as we found out, obviously, we started telling students. Now, the student can argue with the registrar saying this wasn't a policy at the time that they took it, and that's out of our hands. But from now on, we've told the students Article 12 is going to be shown on your external transcript. And it's something that is very weighty. It's obviously a really big deal because it's an entire year away from the university. So we always ask students to consider that option really carefully.
And it's also not like it's just an XII, you know, other institutions just look it over. There's no attached to it that says what it means. And, you know, looking like you're taking 2 semesters off to avoid an academic integrity issue, it makes it look, oftentimes these are small violations that then look like they're way worse. Just because a student is looking like they're thinking they're going to get a penalty that's greater than society.
Is there any advantage now to taking Article 12?
No, there's not at all, not anymore, not since the registrar decided to put that XII, which is why we're bringing this up to be changed now.
And there are disadvantages, right?
Yeah, there are big disadvantages because it's really heartbreaking to see cases where students aren't going to necessarily get a really big penalty, but then they end up taking Article 12, and then we tell them, even though it's going to show up on your transcript, and they take it anyways, and then they come back saying, you know, shouldn't have done that. Because you only get, Article 12 only works that 3 days after the investigative meeting, and it's a very tough time for the students. It's, you know, it's a really big deal going through this, and they're really concerned. And it used to be a way for the students to be able to leave the university, take that time off, and come back, and nothing go wrong. But now it just looks like a really big blunder on their part on the transcript, which isn't fair to the student who might not have done a big deal.
So in the interest of time, let's table questions till the time when we vote, which is in 2 weeks. And Brian, you want to talk about the legislation?
Okay.
The referendum? After the meeting, you
Just we could get an email address just in case anyone has any questions.
So my email is
Okay, for this referendum, we can talk about this more on the 10th. Basically, you have to pass it. It would be unconstitutional to vote no. Our constitution is not binding on the Honor Council. We're doing this as a service. It just says, do you want to amend it or not, and explains the amendment. Constitution last thing?
Yeah, so basically the referendum puts it on the ballot for the election, and then the entire student body has the ability to vote on the Honor Council, Article 12. So like, it's basically a formality that we put it on our ballot through voting in Senate.
Yeah, and it needs 3/4. Okay.
Cool. And then the last thing is our Constitution.
So we presented the initial draft of the Constitution last semester. This is the formal legislation to ratify it at Senate, which would happen by a 2/3 supermajority, and then that would put it on the ballot in accordance with how the new rules are going to work to kind of give us a little bit more procedural control over how referenda are worded. This will be the first one under the new rules. So the Director of Elections will write a neutral question and then bring that to Senate. Obviously, it's Senate doing it in the first place, so here Senate just has to approve the language. If there was a subsidiary organization involved, we would work with the organization to get something that works for everyone. So we're going to try that out. And then there have been a variety of changes, mostly minor, to the Constitution since it was last shown to y'all. They are online on the Constitution page, and they're all change tracked, so it's relatively easy to look through them. I'm not going to bore you by going through all of them. The only big change that has happened has been moving the blanket tax review timeline a little bit earlier and shortening some deadlines because that process was pushing up too closely to elections, and it needs to be done in time for elections for organizations that are applying for a blanket tax or for organizations that may have their blanket tax decreased.
Okay, and then this is also going to be voted on February 10th. And so a note about that meeting, February 10th is actually the date of the presidential debate for SA president. And so the SA presidential debate is going to be at 9 p.m. So we're going to have a short Senate meeting at 8:30 just to vote on all of this legislation. So like all NSRs, you guys don't have to come, just voting members really quickly on that 8:30 time, so we can like, get them all out of the way and then we can have a debate. Any other announcements?
Did we want to bring up the prior notice amendment?
Oh, we'll talk about it next week. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. Any other announcements? Let's all hope for another ice day. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second. All those in favor? Yay!